Today we are going to talk about this new channel I found out about called Second Thought. And according to some of my friends in the chat, they say Second Thought started as more of a science channel. If you watch their intro video, they're all about big think stuff, or that's how they present themselves. But according to my friends in the chat, and I have a smart audience, so I trust them, over the last year or so, according to Alcazay in the chat, Second Thought has become a full-on Marxist YouTube channel. And you can see they're pretty popular. Got 900,000 subscribers. This video was put up a couple weeks ago. And already has over 150,000 views. So I thought we would check this out today. Let's see what... so the question is, the title is, are you really free under capitalism? Let's see what Second Thought has to say. Speed it up first.
This episode and others like it are made possible by the generous support of my patrons on Patreon. If you'd like to help me make more content like this, consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/secondthought. If you were to ask a handful of Americans what makes their country so special, odds are most of them would respond, our freedom.
Or whatever freedom Americans still have.
If you were to press them on the issue and ask why we experience such freedom, their answer would probably be something about the Founding Fathers, our strong military, and capitalism. Now, this video is not about the various global freedom rankings, in which America performs poorly compared to other wealthy nations. You can look those up on your own time. What I want to focus on is the adversarial relationship between our capitalist system and personal freedom. For decades now, the words capitalism and freedom have been treated as synonyms.
And they are synonymous.
But over the course of this video, I hope to show you that capitalism doesn't enable freedom at all. In fact,
capitalism does not enable freedom. How so?
It actively suppresses it. This
actively suppresses it. How so?
May sound like a strange claim, but bear with me. I think you'll come around by the end. Before we begin, we need to have a deeper understanding of freedom than simply I get to do what I want. Let's start with the concepts of positive and negative freedom.
So here, this is a distinguishing feature that I've seen from a lot of leftists on YouTube, is they never bring in definitions like freedom. This never really comes up. They usually just complain about, wealth inequality and, a bunch of different economic issues that are not related to capitalism, but that's how it goes.
Positive freedom is having the capacity to act according to one's free will.
Yeah, and you do have the capacity to, we do have free will, and you should be able to act until you are violating someone else's rights. That's something that you're not allowed to do.
I get to do what I want is an expression of positive freedom. Negative freedom, on the other hand, is the freedom from coercion by others.
Yes. And I think this is the defining characteristic of capitalism, is that capitalism, again, is a society that respects individual rights, where government only protects your individual rights and property rights. And freedom in this context means freedom from coercion, freedom from physical force. Now, it's interesting that he brings this up, because I don't think he does a good job of connecting the dots between coercion and what he claims happens under capitalism.
One example of this would be the freedom to speak freely without fearing retribution from the state.
Or freedom from retribution from private citizens. If I say that I like pineapple on my pizza, you're not allowed to say, hey, buddy, take that back or I'm going to punch you in the nose.
These two types of freedom can be summed up as freedom to and freedom from.
And I would say that they go together. You should have the freedom to act, right to action, not a right to rewards from other people. And you need to be free from coercion in order to use your mind. Use your free will to make decisions and focus and act.
They often get tangled up and end up in conflict with one another, as in the gun rights example, I have the right to carry a gun in public versus...
Now, it's interesting he brings up the gun rights thing, because this is one of the issues where it's very complicated, and it can be very difficult to determine when the government is proper to come in and tell you, no, you're not allowed to carry a gun. Or even in the issue of private businesses. Years ago, I was driving through Arizona, and I stopped off at a random bar, and I remember seeing a sign on the door that said, no fire alarms allowed in this establishment. Okay, well, if I'm carrying a firearm, I have to respect their property rights, and if I don't, then I have to leave. But that's not an infringement on my Second Amendment rights, on my right to keep and bear arms.
I have the right to walk around without the threat of being shot. There will always be disagreement surrounding the issue of which form of freedom should take precedent. But the point of this
both take precedent.
Video is that capitalism suppresses both forms.
Capitalism suppresses both forms. Now notice, this is a recurring theme, and I keep reminding you guys. Notice what he's not doing. He's not defining capitalism. And as you'll see, as with most critics of capitalism, most haters of capitalism, most anti-capitalists, They talk about capitalism as the status quo in America. Just whatever the status quo is. And you'll notice toward the end, he's going to totally contradict himself on this.
Let's take a capitalist economy as an example.
A capitalist economy.
Would you say that this kind of economy offers a positive?
I would say that this kind of economy is a mixed economy with elements of capitalism and socialism and fascism. We live in a mixed economy.
Or negative freedom as its value proposition. A positive freedom would be, I am entitled to a guaranteed fair share of the economy.
Well, no, that's not a freedom. You're not guaranteed to a fair share of the economy, whatever that means. You have a right to the products that you produce or trade for on the market, but you don't have a right to a certain amount of the economy, a certain share of the economy. But he even says...
That doesn't fit.
That doesn't fit. Yeah, you're right. It doesn't.
About a negative freedom. I am entitled to operate in the economy without coercion by powerful groups.
I am entitled to operate in the economy without coercion by powerful groups. Absolutely. But this guy sees coercion as, what is called economic power.
That's closer, and that's how free market enthusiasts have chosen to describe the freedom afforded by capitalism. Here's the problem. Those people see the government as the only entity capable of exerting control over the economy.
And it does have a significant control over the economy. But again, that's not really the issue here. Because, say like Apple computers, Steve Jobs, they're going to have a significant influence over the economy with the way they make computers and iPhones and how many people buy them and use them to better their everyday lives. Right? Now, there's a distinguishing feature between an institution like the government and an institution like Apple Computers. If I don't follow the government's commands, if I don't want to do what the government says, they can throw me in jail, they can tax me, they can fine me, and if I don't pay the taxes and fines, then they're going to throw me in jail. So when I don't comply with the government's influence over the economy, they can use force to punish me. But if I don't buy an iPhone, if I don't buy a MacBook from Apple, they can't throw me in jail. They can't throw handcuffs on me. They can't force me to buy their products. So that is the distinguishing characteristic. I am free from coercion from Apple. They're not allowed to. They don't coerce me. The government, on the other hand, totally coerces me. They can and they do.
Government power is significant, but in today's...
Anyone ever get a bill from the IRS? Apple has sent me bills. I mean, they've sent me receipts for, like, whenever I buy a book or something on iBooks or buy a song on iTunes. But I'm never going to wake up one day and have a random bill from Apple say, hey, buddy, you owe us $2,000, and if you don't pay it, we're going to throw you in jail. The IRS, on the other hand... I've actually never received a bill from the IRS, but I know people who have, and it's not a fun day. Although I have received bills from the LA, Los Angeles city government for taxes that I owe.
Today's hyper-capitalist economies...
Hyper-capitalist economy, folks.
Governments themselves are beholden to the ultra-rich and massive multinational corporations.
Now, this is true to a certain extent. They're beholden to the rich and national and the corporations. Yeah, and this is what happens when you have a mixed economy, when you have a regulatory state, when you have a welfare state. Eventually, people are going to start lobbying the government for favors, for benefits, or to just keep them off their ass. And the solution is more capitalism, is to get rid of to phase out the regulatory state and the welfare state and say, you know what, government, we're going to stay out of the economy. And that way, people won't want to go to the government for favors because they know they're not going to get jack shit.
Capitalism not only fails...
And of course, when you have the mixed economy, yeah, the rich, the corporations, they're probably going to have the most pull because they have the most money to spend.
To guarantee its people a fair share of the economy, positive freedom, it also fails to prevent the meddling of disproportionately powerful entities in the economy, negative freedom. Tax laws are always written...
Now again, corporations are not coercive. This is where this guy misses on the issue of coercion. If I order a package from Amazon and make them richer, am I getting coerced?
Absolutely fucking not.
Written to benefit the top 1%, energy policies always...
And they say, they write... Let's rewind that for a second.
Positive freedom. It also fails to prevent the meddling of disproportionately powerful entities in the economy. Negative freedom. Tax laws are always written to benefit the top 1%.
Tax laws are always written to benefit the top 1%. Well then, why does the top 1% pay 35% of the federal income taxes? Not to mention state taxes, where they, especially in California, they pay a lot more, a lot higher percentage than the rest of the population. Meanwhile, I think the bottom 50% of Americans pay roughly 2% of the total income taxes. But apparently it's all written to benefit the top 1%, you guys.
Policies always benefit massively wealthy fossil fuel companies, despite their effect on the climate. Why? Because the ultra-wealthy have bought both major political parties in the...
And I'm not sure this is true either. Fossil fuel companies are constantly dealing with regulations and taxes like cap and trade and shit. I mean, what was it? Governor Gavin Newsom here in the great state of California just signed an executive order. So it looks like he's going to try to make it illegal for automotive companies to sell gas-powered vehicles in 2035. Now, this is more of a regulation imposed on the automotive industry, but it's going to have an impact on the fossil fuel industry because people are not going to be going to the gas station as much. Where are these fossil fuel companies? Why? You'd think that Gavin Newsom would be outlawing electric vehicles, not the other way around.
U.S. This is a direct result of runaway capitalism.
Runaway capitalism, you guys. We have runaway capitalism.
Accumulation of obscene levels of wealth in the hands of...
Obscene levels of... What's obscene? Huh? It's what they... Oh, obscene levels of wealth. Outrageous wealth. At what point does it become outrageous? $1 billion, $50 billion, $300 million, $18? It's completely arbitrary.
Tiny fraction of the population has created an owner class with godlike power. Let's take another...
Owner class. There's no such thing as classes. There's just individuals in a society.
Another example. America has a for-profit healthcare system.
I wish that were the case. America has a for-profit healthcare system. I wish that were the case. Now, there are still elements of capitalism in the American healthcare system, but as I have covered, I recommend, for those who are not familiar with me, watch my rebuttal to John Oliver's Medicare for All segment, where I go into incredible detail on this issue about the lack of capitalism and how all the problems with American healthcare, health insurance, and medicine are a result of government intervention in the market. For-profit healthcare system, runaway capitalism. Meanwhile, we have Medicare and Medicaid, Obamacare, the FDA, tax laws that make health insurance tax exempt for employers, which is where I think a lot of this started and created a ton of distortions, which eventually led to other subsidies, other regulations in this area. But according to second thought, we have runaway capitalism and it's a completely for-profit. I wish that were the case.
It's incredibly lucrative, worth a staggering $3.65 trillion as of 2018. In a humane system, average people would be able to afford medical treatment.
In a humane system, it would be for-profit. It would be completely free.
They could go to the emergency room without the fear of racking up tremendous medical debt. That's not the case in America.
By the way, and how is this coercion? So are doctors just going up to random people and saying, hey, buddy, you need an eye surgery, and they just, like, hold them against their will and start fucking with their eyes? Is that what's going on? This what coercion is? Now, there is coercion, but not the way second thought thinks about it.
Before the pandemic hit, there were over 137 million Americans struggling to pay their medical bills. Again, that was before the pandemic. We've had 6.5 million confirmed cases of COVID since then, and hospital stays are incredibly expensive. The fact that we have so many people having to choose between going bankrupt and risking dying of preventable medical conditions is a damning indictment of our capitalist system.
It's a damning indictment of our mixed economy in the healthcare system. Government intervention in the healthcare system.
By choosing profits over all else, our hyper-capitalist healthcare industry has
hyper-capitalist healthcare industry. Listen to this guy.
Limited our freedom to reasonably priced care and our freedom from the fear of
reasonably priced care. Well, this is a result of government intervention. The powerful insurance companies that are powerful due to tax incentives and the government, which forces healthcare providers to cut prices when they see Medicare patients by stimulating demand by having Medicare to begin with. I mean, the drug industry, the FDA locks out competition, which ends up in higher prices and less innovation. Innovation is another area where that causes prices to fall, costs to fall. And the FDA, you know, if you want a new drug, if you want a new medication, it's going to take you years, if not decades, and hundreds of millions of dollars. But back to healthcare, because of the insurance lobby and the Medicare lobby, a lot of clinics and hospitals don't know what to price things at, because they know that some powerful institution, whatever they set the price at, someone's going to come and negotiate that price down. So now we have all of these price distortions in healthcare, and it's a result of government intervention in healthcare.
Bankruptcy for basic health services. You have the freedom to start a business, but the end goal of capitalism is ever-increasing profits.
There is no end goal of capitalism. Now, people have goals. Individuals would have goals in a free capitalist society, but capitalism itself, it's not a conscious entity. And yeah, if someone opens a business, they're going to need to be profitable, or they ain't going to last very long.
And your business will likely fail, as our system refuses to provide a level playing field.
Refuses. Now, again, there is truth to that, because our mixed economy system does put up a lot of barriers, puts up a lot of hurdles for people who might want to start a business. Going back to the FDA example, if you want to start a new drug company and you have some groundbreaking drugs or experimental drugs, good luck getting that shit to market. Especially here in California, now Uber, they just made Uber's business model illegal. Now Uber has to like beg the voters to repeal the dumb AB5 regulation. So many regulations, so many taxes that make it difficult to open a business in America, particularly in blue states like California and New York and whatnot. But again, apparently it's all capitalism's fault. But even then, this doesn't explain the coercive part. What coercive aspects of capitalism are not making the quote-unquote playing field level and fair? Again, is it Jeff Bezos coming around with guns and tanks and saying, "Hey, buddy, you get that business out of here"?
Hundreds of thousands of small businesses have been destroyed by the pandemic. But
destroyed by the pandemic, huh? Is that what happened, or was it government lockdowns? Like, again, here in California, I can keep using California as an example. Now, I don't know if you guys know this, but Mayor Eric Garcetti has threatened to use the power of government-controlled utilities. If you open your business against COVID regulations, if you violate the lockdown, the mandatory lockdowns, then Eric Garcetti has promised to shut off your electricity. That's how powerful it is. It's due to government lockdowns. Apparently, that's capitalism's fault.
The country's billionaires and wealthiest corporations have seen a dramatic increase in net worth.
Well, yeah, that's what happens when you shut down all of the brick and mortars. Where do you think people are going to go?
Why? Because they were taken care of.
They were taken care of.
Were bailed out or able to capitalize on the suffering of others.
They were bailed out. They were given money by the government, which is either going to have to come through taxes later on, or it's going to be just printed into existence by our government-controlled monetary system.
As of June, the country's wealthiest people had gotten $637 billion richer over the course of the pandemic.
Which is largely due to the values of their companies that they own increasing in value.
Capitalists applaud the fact that anyone can start a business, but how can you compete?
And you're going to see he's going to make it sound like they just stole all of this money, that their net worth equals money stolen.
Against these corporate leviathans that monopolize the economy and can...
They monopolize the economy, you guys.
Demand whatever legislation they want from those in power. There's no freedom there.
Of course, there's still antitrust legislation. I wish they would lobby the government to throw that in the garbage.
For the average person. Okay, but...
And it's being used against companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook and Twitter as we speak by both parties. But apparently we have this hyper capitalism, you guys, that's creating monopolies.
About the job market. Free market enthusiasts will say that relationships between workers and employers are free and equal. If you hate your job, you have the freedom to leave and find another one. But if small businesses can't pay you a decent wage because they can't compete, and large companies are all trying to maximize profits by cutting costs and extracting as much labor from their workers for as little money as possible, you're unlikely to find a job that will offer a living wage. To make matters worse, capitalism treats basic necessities like commodities, healthcare, food, water, shelter. These things can all be exploited to make a profit.
Oh no, water and food are made to make a profit. This is another recurring theme, is that anti-capitalists, they talk about stuff like food and water as if it just exists, as if someone doesn't have to create it and bring it into existence first. Oh no, Coca-Cola. They clean water and then bottle it up and sell it for $1 at the gas station. The horror, you guys.
The average American is compelled to sell their labor and hours of their life for whatever wage they can find, simply to cover the skyrocketing cost of housing.
The skyrocketing cost of housing. Notice how he keeps bringing up areas of the economy that are heavily regulated and subsidized, like healthcare and housing, especially in California. Is California still part of the United States, according to this goof? California has a housing shortage because 45% of the cost of building a new house is jumping through regulatory hoops, like zoning regulations in especially in big cities, but also new environmental regulations. I think starting next year, new homes in California are going to have to be built with solar panels. Not to mention the housing crisis, which began with government intervention, federal intervention in housing.
That's not freedom. That's coercion. Take the
Yeah, that is coercion, but not from capitalism. It's from government intervention.
Place itself. You are subjected to the whims of the employer, no matter how demeaning or unfair. Constant schedule changes, demands to come in.
Yeah, I mean, that's what employment is. You're selling your labor on the market.
Cover a shift, restriction of freedom of speech.
Restrictions of freedom of speech. Yeah, when you're at work, you're not going to be able to say whatever's on your mind, right? Like if you're waiting tables at, say, an Italian restaurant, are you allowed to go up to your customer and say, "Oh, you really want that lasagna, you fat fuck? Don't fire me, boss, because that's my freedom of speech."
Completely at the mercy of someone who can fire you for any reason or no reason at all, simply because you
Yeah, no one owes you a job. What can I say?
cannot afford not to work. The vast majority of people don't have the luxury of taking time off to find another job, because that would likely mean missing a rent payment. You will be kicked out of your home and starve if you don't engage in the soul-crushing meat grinder that is the American labor market. That's not freedom. I can hear it now.
That's not freedom? Oh, so what you think people should just give you stuff without expecting anything in return? People owe you a house and they just have to give it to you? What?
If you don't like it, you can just leave. How? How can the average American disengage with this coercive system? Even if you wanted
this coercive system
to, say, live on your own land and produce...
Now, if I wanted to build a new house, the government of California might say, "Hey, you're violating some..." Well, no one would ever build it for me because they would have to jump through all of the regulatory hoops. And if they violate it, then they're going to be they're going to get strung through courts. They're going to have to pay a bunch of fines and whatnot.
Your own food, thereby removing the power of the coercive capitalist system. In order to escape, you need capital. You need enough money to buy the land, which is already impossible for most people.
Also, the federal government owns, 600 million acres of land that they're not doing jack shit with.
Then the funds to build a home, however small, and acquire supplies to grow food, find a way to collect water, and so on. The problem is, there's no way...
Yeah, how many state regulations ban the collection of water?
For the average American to accumulate that kind of money. The vast majority of capital is concentrated at the very top, and it's only getting worse. In 2019, the richest person on the Forbes Top 400 list was 21 times wealthier than the richest person on the list in 1982, adjusted for inflation. That money isn't just coming out of thin air.
So look at this article he brings up. The top 1% of Americans have taken $50 trillion from the bottom 90%. Now, this study, or the study that this article is based on, starts in 1975. And I don't know if you guys know this, but the 1% from 1975, not the same 1% in 2020. I know that because I know at least in 1990, since 1990, the top 1% has grown by 500,000 people. And you might be thinking, well, how did that happen? Is it because of a change in the tax code? No, it's because the population grew. And considering that 1% is an arbitrary grouping of rich people, the 1% would have grown by 500,000 people if the population grows from 250 million to 300 million. So, but they make it sound like the 1% is just a handful of people who, and 90% of Americans were just had $50 trillion that they were just sitting comfortably on. And then like people like Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg just snuck around in the night and they just took it from them. Is that what happened?
It's being siphoned from the rest of the population. That money also is not...
Siphoned from the rest of the population. Now, again, a lot of people's net worth is tied up in stocks, and that's assessed in stock value. So when Jeff Bezos has $100 billion, or when it's reported that he's worth $100 billion, it's not like he has $100 billion in gold just lying around that he and his other 1% buddies just stole from the 90% over the last 45 years.
Not going back into the economy. It's being hoarded and used to buy
It's
legislation
not going back into the economy. Well, where is it then?
favorable to giant corporations.
Well,
Meanwhile,
it's going into legislation. So $50 trillion has gone into lobbying.
real wages have gone down, unions have been all but eradicated, preventing collective bargaining for better treatment, and most people can't cover a surprise $400 expense.
Now, I've covered this $400 emergency expense myth in another video, which will be linked whenever I put it up on YouTube.
You don't even have the freedom to disengage from the capitalist system. This
Don't have the freedom to... What does that even mean?
system, and by extension your life,
I guess, too, in a certain... If we're talking about the mixed economy, yeah. You have to pay taxes. I guess the only way is to leave the country entirely. Disengage... What does he mean by that?
is owned by the ultra-wealthy. This is the logical conclusion of capitalism, and decades of consolidation of wealth and power in the hands of an
The logical conclusion of capitalism?
increasingly small number of oligarchs. Capitalism cannot solve these problems because it doesn't recognize them
What problems exactly?
as problems. The system is designed to allow for maximization of profit and will always yield monopolies and vast inequality.
Always yield monopolies and vast inequality. Monopolies are only possible through government favors.
Corporations like Amazon can end careers and the future of entire cities by picking up and moving to a better tax haven. And
Oh, is that the problem? Tax havens? Well, here's a thought. If they're in a city and a lot of people are reliant on their work and they're being taxed out of existence, here's a thought. Lower the fucking taxes.
they will, every time, because it makes them more money. Living your life
Oh, no, not profits, you guys.
at the mercy of the owner class doesn't sound like freedom to me. The vision of a free America and opportunity for all doesn't
He still has not explained how this is all coercive. I have, how the mixed economy is coercive. But he hasn't. What's his definition of coercion?
exist. Our lives are becoming less and less free. We have less time to spend with our loved ones, less money to put away for the future. Our life expectancy is decreasing.
Why put away for the future when we have Social Security? Wonders why people don't put away for the future. But we'll get to that in a second. You'll see.
We can't get medical treatment because it will bankrupt us. We can't start a business because it will be crushed by the major players or left to die when the next pandemic comes along. And the government will always side with the ultra-wealthy instead of the average American because both parties are entirely bought and paid for. At this point in history, there is nothing capitalism can offer us that a more humane system could not. It's just a matter
I'd say capitalism is the most humane system. Freedom is humane.
of realizing that we've been conditioned by decades of propaganda to see capitalism as a synonym for freedom.
I guess I'm just brainwashed by propaganda, you guys.
Capitalism does not provide freedom. It suppresses it. Okay, so what's the
How so? He has not explained how it suppresses freedom.
solution? That depends on who you ask. Some people think we can reform the system at the ballot box. Others think electoral politics is a dead end. The means may not be clear, but the end goal is, we need to replace capitalism with a system that values human life over profits. One that
Well, I think human life and profits go hand in hand. Profits are a sign of flourishing. It's a sign of production, of creation, wealth creation. What's wrong with profits?
actually does expand our freedoms and provides every person with a life of dignity. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you'll know that I think socialism is the answer.
Nigga, get the fuck out of here.
Socialism is the answer. So he lists all these economic problems without explaining their root cause. And then he says socialism is the answer, when we know socialism is disastrous for an economy. What a goof.
Look at the things we have today that are a direct result of socialist policy. Child labor laws.
Child labor laws. Now, I did a whole video about this recently. Child labor was declining before there was ever the existence of child labor laws. And the reason why children went to the factories was because it was just a metaphysical necessity. I don't know if you guys know this. The standard of living in the 19th century was much lower than today, but it was a huge improvement over subsistence farming. Because even then, children still had to work on the farm. And working in factories was a step up. But also, should children have the right to work if they want to, and as long as they have their parents' permission? I worked jobs as a child. Andrew Carnegie worked jobs as a child. Thomas Edison worked as a kid. And I highly doubt if given the opportunity, like if kids in America today, if they had the option to go work for like $1 an hour at a sweatshop, I doubt any of them would take that opportunity. Because most kids, they can sit in their air-conditioned homes and just play Nintendo Switch for 4 hours when they get home from school. But if they want to, what if they want to go work, what if they just want to go sweep floors at their local restaurant, their local mom and pop? Should they be allowed to do that?
The weekend, the 40-hour work week.
Oh, the 40-hour work week. Medicare, here we go.
Medicare, Social Security.
Social Security, here we go.
Workplace safety laws, the 8-hour workday, and many others. Look at this list. Does anything stand out to you?
You know what? It's redundant, first of all, because he has the 40-hour work week and the 8-hour workday. Those are the same fucking thing. Not to mention before labor regulations like mandatory overtime pay and stuff, hours worked was declining. And child labor also declined because, I don't know if you guys know this, children aren't really that productive. They're not the best workers. And on top of that, parents started overtime as time progressed throughout American capitalism, or to the extent we had it. We never had pure capitalism. Parents started making money to the point where they did not have to send their kids to work. But then we got Medicare and Social Security. So let me bring this up really quick. This is a meme that I like to share on social media. It's the pajama boy. This is a common argument from anti-capitalists. They say stuff like, you don't like socialism, huh? Do you like Social Security and Medicare and roads and public schools and the FDA and child labor laws? See, we already have socialism. Let's have more socialism. But then when things get bad, when we have a financial crisis, when Flint's water becomes undrinkable, when we have an epidemic and an ensuing lockdown, when housing becomes unaffordable, when healthcare and health insurance become unaffordable, well, then it's all because we have unfettered, unregulated capitalism. Which the fuck is it? So he spent this whole video talking about how we have hyper capitalism, and then at the end of the video, look at all these programs, Social Security, Medicare, that help restrain capitalism. Jesus Christ.
To you. Besides being staples of modern life, each of these policies defies the capitalist goal.
And yeah, so oh, people aren't saving for the future. Why would they when they think that the government's going to be paying them in the future? You know, it has that double effect where people, they're disincentivized to save because, hey, so the government's going to pay you once you hit 65. And also because of government intervention and banking and finance and money, currency creation, we have this unstable system where we're constantly on booms and busts that always need to be corrected. And so the stock market is more difficult to predict. So people don't want to invest in the stock market because they're afraid they might wake up one day and their retirement account will be wiped out. But apparently it's all capitalism's fault.
Of profit over all else. Children were great workers because they were small enough to crawl inside.
No, they were not great workers.
A giant factory machine, then you could pay
Except for Andrew Carnegie. Apparently he was really good at reading Morse code for that train station.
less. We're used to an 8-hour workday today, but in the past, people would work 12 hours or more in a shift. Making workplaces safer was expensive.
Yeah, and those 12-hour workdays were a step up from working 20 hours on a farm in freezing rain. But again, I did that in a whole other video, which I'll link to whenever I post this on YouTube.
And business owners didn't want to do that. Without socialists and other leftists fighting to keep capitalism from going completely off the rails, we'd be in an even worse place than we are today.
We'd be in a worse place without socialism. Thank goodness for socialism.
Is infinitely more valuable than corporate profits. Many Americans
we have hyper capitalism, but socialism saved us from hyper. Which is it?
Are finally beginning to see that the system doesn't work for them, that it's built on the exploitation of their labor, that they will never reap the benefits of their own hard work.
Yeah, whenever you work, someone's going to be exploiting you. Again, who wants to pay someone to not work or do terrible work?
By its very definition, capitalism demands
Oh, look at that, Las Vegas. What a beautiful city. I love Las Vegas.
the weakening of democratic systems and the suppression of the vast majority of people. Capitalism is not freedom. Capitalism is the enemy of freedom, and it needs
it's the enemy of freedom.
to go. We can choose to replace it with a system that strengthens democracy and expands individual freedom, where we're not held hostage by obscene housing, education, and healthcare costs, where the ultra-wealthy
Obscene housing, education, healthcare costs. The three areas of the economy that the government is most involved in. And it's all capitalism's fault.
no longer have complete control over government. We can say no more to the two-party corporate duopoly and demand representatives who cater not to special interests, but to the average citizen. We can build a system that cares for the survivability of the planet and the future of all people. A system that is truly
The future of all people.
worthy of being called free. I mentioned at the beginning of this video that this kind of content is supported by my Patreon.
Yeah, there we go. So, yeah, please, I guess, give him money so he can keep selling you more propaganda. More nonsense. So not only did this guy, this goof, fail to define capitalism and coercion, he failed to connect the dots.